Pope St. John XXIII first announced his intention of convoking the Second Vatican Council on the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul on January the 25th, 1959. He addressed 17 cardinals in the Basilica of St. Paul outside the walls of Rome to share his intentions of convoking the Church's 21st ecumenical council. Preparations for the council took 3 years, from the summer of 1959 to the autumn of 1962. The council met in St. Peter's Basilica for 4 sessions, each lasting between 8 and 12 weeks, in the autumn of each of the 4 years from 1962 to 1965. The council was finally opened on October the 11th, 1962, by Pope John XXIII himself. The council was closed on December the 8th, 1965, by Pope Paul VI. In order to better understand the Second Vatican Council and the intentions that Pope John XXIII had when starting it, it's important to start at the very beginning and understand why Pope John XXIII chose the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul to announce his intention of convoking the Second Vatican Council.
Well, my own reading of the coincidence of that it was convoked on the 25th of January. My own reading is because Pope John wanted the whole Church to renew its missionary endeavour. And that meant, in some ways, to think things through from beginning to end, to think, you might say, what the Church's situation is, what the Church's mission is, what is the role of each and every person within the Church.
What can we make of the importance for the Church of the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul? Pope John XXIII opened the historic Second Vatican Council, fully convinced that it was time to, quote, throw open the windows of the Church and let the fresh air of the Spirit blow through. And as he announced his intentions of convoking this ecumenical council as Supreme Pontiff of the Church, he chose to highlight the direction he wanted it to go in by choosing the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul as the date he would announce this to the world.
The conversion of St. Paul is a very important date in the history of salvation, the history of the Church, because he was coming out from the great Jewish tradition in the Old Testament, which forms a part also of our Christian identity, and also this date is also important. The beginning of the Second Vatican Council, but it's not so important like the New Testament and the Church in its origin, because the ecumenical councils are not a refoundation of the Church, but is only an interpretation and a presentation of the Word of God, and with this value for all the times.
With the desire of using the Council as an impetus for making the global Church renew its global missionary efforts, what did the Church learn from St. Paul and his missionary efforts?
If you read through his letters, you experience all the time, on the one hand, that he's trying to communicate the beauty of the faith and the fact that faith and living in a Christian way is really worthwhile. It really changes your life. And the other thing that you can see throughout his letters is that he was constantly trying to understand and adapt to the particular situation, the particular pastoral situation that the different churches were in.
Looking now at the anniversary of 60 years since the opening of the Second Vatican Council, we can look more clearly at how the Second Vatican Council took its cues from the figure of St. Paul, the Apostle of the Gentiles.
The Gentiles is the old terminology of the few Jewish vision are the pagans. No? They are the one God who revealed himself to Moses and to the Israelitic people, later we said Jewish people, but the same identity, historical identity. And outside of this one true self-revealed God, there was a belief in the gods of the pagans. And St. Paul later was in the beginning of Christianity from Jerusalem, or after his conversion. He had the special call of Jesus Christ, the risen Lord, to preach this gospel not only to the elected people of God, the Jewish people, but to everybody in the world. But this universal horizon is not a strange addition to the Old Testamentarian or Jewish belief, because the God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses is the creator of everybody.
As we reflect on the importance of the Feast of the Conversion of St. Paul and how it has served as a catalyst for renewing the Church's efforts to share the good news, let's also remember that it's at the end of the week of prayer for Christian unity, and to continue to pray for further unity amongst our Christian brothers.